Hey, PBA churches, this is Brian, Director of the Pensacola Bay Baptist Association. We're so blessed to be able to have a great team with us today. We are just coming off of Hurricane Sally, still just a few weeks more left in hurricane season. But one of the challenges that so many churches face is insurance and dealing with the aftermath of any storm that comes. So we want to prepare beforehand. How do we deal in the middle of all the difficulty that comes with damage that comes to our facilities, and then what we need to do afterwards. And so today we have a couple good experts, kind of a panel to be able to put together. One is Terry Fortune. He's with Beacon Insurance Company out of Pace. Great guy, been able to help with policies on many of our churches and organizations across the area. And the second is Mike Wasden. He is with Sedgwick, which is out of Macon, Georgia, where he has been in the adjusting business at this company for 8 years and in the general insurance adjusting world for well over 30. And so brings a lot of experience to the table. So guys, welcome. Appreciate the opportunity here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah. Hey, let's dive into a couple of questions here. And so let's just say that a hurricane or whatever disaster is just wrapping up, the winds are dying down or whatever the situation might be. What should a church, and we're just going to put that in the whole context of our discussion today, what should a church do prior to calling an insurance company or their agent? Is there anything that should be on their checklist, any actions that they need to take that would govern, do I need to make the call or not?
Mike, you want that one or you want me?
All right, I will. Thing you need to do is assess the damage. A lot of the policies now have a wind deductibles that are 2, 5, 10% of the amount of coverage for the building. So if you've got a large worship center, it's got several $1 million worth of coverage, you're going to have an extremely large deductible. What I would suggest is you get a committee, maybe someone in the church that's a contractor, works for a construction company, walk around and assess the damage and find out, or get an idea. Do you think this is going to go over the deductible? Is this worth reporting, or is this something that we just need to take care of ourselves? You have a few shingles blown off the roof. Maybe you just patch those shingles and go on about your business. If it's a substantial damage, then immediately call your agent and report a claim. But with that being said, if you've got leaks, if water's coming in, your first order of business is to mitigate your damage. Put tarps up, things like that to prevent additional damage from occurring.
Is there let's say a break point in there that if a church or a committee is kind of wavering back and forth, to be able to say, let's call our insurance agent, maybe have an adjuster come out, and based off what they say to analyze the property, we can then decide, do we want to go that route or not? Or once we call the agent, are we committed to go through the full process?
You can always withdraw a claim. A lot of the companies now, and Terry would be better to answer this, but a lot of companies now, your premiums and your future policy is based on claims history or claims frequency, maybe not necessarily the dollar amount of the claims. So I don't know, the policy says that you need to report your claim within a timely fashion. I just think it would be better to, before you start the process. Now, if you have an agent like Terry, he will come out with you. I mean, he's a very good agent, and he will come out and look at it with you probably. But that that's got to be a decision. But you just really have to watch frequencies now on claims.
Frequency, that's the big one.
The coastal area is just the market's so limited now with companies that are willing to write insurance.
Yeah.
And
I've almost noted sometimes there is, let's just say there's one company and there's maybe many claims throughout the entire state. And that can affect future rates. It's not necessarily maybe your particular church, you might have been good, or our 2-3 counties might have been fine. But the rest of the state, like what we saw in Hurricane Irma, boy, there's like many of the counties were infected. So those, I know frequency plays into it. Let me ask you this. Go back to the securing of the facility. So we think there was damage. We think it's the value or the cost of the damage is greater than the amount of the deductible. So we call Terry, we call our insurance guy and say we want to move forward. And so there's some security measures. To what amount should work be done before the insurance agent comes out? Is it just securing, or is it, hey, let's do a whole bunch, let's do pictures and let's do some repairs and just kind of do
Yeah.
as much as we can? How do we
I mean,
balance that?
Everybody's got a camera now. I mean, it's easy to document damages. It really depends on the adjuster too. I've never been a stickler for, hey, I've got to see it myself. I mean, if you've got damages, if you got wet drywall laying on the floor, you got wet carpet, and you document that damage with photographs. Go ahead and clean it up. Prevent wet drywall, wet carpet leads to mold. So I would go ahead, document it, and remove it, and just go from there. I mean, you don't want to let it sit, and then 2 weeks later, your entire sanctuary is full of mold.
Yeah.
But it's,
What about, let's just say, let's get hypothetical here. We see, and Terry, there's probably some unique stories that you've seen through the years. Is there specific damage that's been seen? We know we're going to go through the insurance process. We're almost anticipating there is going to be guaranteed damage, maybe even finances coming to us. So we yank out the carpet, we dry everything, and we go ahead and we purchase some new. Is that a step too far? Or is it should be, hey, let's back up and let's just remove and hit pause?
Yes, and I'm going to say in most cases that is a step too far. Policy says, number one, you mitigate any further damage, like Mike said. So if you've got leaks, try to mitigate those. But to me, it all comes back down to common sense, and then standard and customary is a term that I like to use. Just in the last month, Hurricane Sally had a deacon climb up on a church and fell off. So I'm going to tell you, if it's reasonable to tarp and patch the roof, this kind of thing, okay. If it's outside of your realm, then don't get up there. Call in the experts and that kind of thing. We have a fantastic mitigation company that I've used them for more than 10 years, and they do an excellent job on our stuff, and they get there pretty quick. They work the whole Southeast, but they're out of Bruton, and they can get there in an hour or two, even in the middle of the night. We have one of our really large churches that flooded, and and they have helped us out with some huge claims from Hurricane Sally. And what they get in, and when you say rip out the carpet, got a situation now where a very large church had lost the roof. Water came inside. Roof is going to be, my goodness, it's going to be probably close to $1 million roof. The mitigation was close to $1 million to dry the building out, but they did it with large equipment. They call it desiccants and this kind of thing. And they didn't rip out any carpet, very little. And we have another large church in our area that was dried out from the flood of 2014. And they were dried out in about 4 days, and from this same company. Didn't miss a service, did not pull out carpet, did not start making piles of sheetrock. They basically got the building in there, got the building dry. So you just have to look at all different things. And if that particular church had ripped up carpet and sheetrock, man, they would have been in a mess for a month or more before they could have had service and safe situation with kids running around and this kind of thing.
So what you're saying is sometimes there is some mitigation work that we can, oh, this needs to be fixed. And we think the solution might be bigger than necessary. And if we don't get hey, let's get an expert mitigation company, especially if it's a substantial square footage of a campus.
That's right.
Let's get right mitigation so you're not spending more money than actually you needed to.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And to dry a building out, experience is the best way to learn, but usually the most expensive. So if you can learn off of somebody else's experience, that's a bonus. With some of these large sanctuaries, you could take out the bottom 18 inches or 2 feet of sheetrock and carpet, but you have still got so much moisture in that building because of the air. When you're drying out a building, you have to think about the cubic feet of air that's in that sanctuary, that's super tall ceilings and this kind of thing. But to prevent mold, you have to remove the moisture and dry out the building. And there's a couple of different ways of doing that, but just going in and ripping things up, is not always the absolute best, quickest and this kind of thing. You rip up wet carpet, and if you can't really get that slab underneath it dry, you've still got a moisture issue, and here you go. The new carpet starts molding, and that kind of thing. So,
and especially in Florida, where humidity is more frequent than about anything else around here. It'll really grow in a hurry. Let's talk about when the adjuster comes out. Is it, hey, I'm here, I'm with the company and adjust? Should you just let them go loose and wander? Maybe giving them a help, look to that building, look to that. Or should you or the team walk with them every single step of the way? How should that relationship between the church committee and the adjuster work when they're on your campus?
Well, there's some adjusters that get intimidated by large groups, large committees, the entire deacon board going with them from building to building. There's others that, it doesn't bother me. I'm kind of the more the merrier type person. But I would at least have a representative from the church, already have this mapped out and take the adjuster and show him building by building, what's there. Because, the churches today with the campuses with multiple buildings, there might be a building that the adjuster doesn't see if he's, out by himself. All the corridors and all that stuff. But I would have at least 1 or 2 people take him around and map out what, here's the damages we see. This is what we're going to show you. And then most adjusters, myself included, I see damage every day of my life. So I might notice something that you don't notice. Mm-hmm. But you got to get me in the room where you notice the damage and do my thing. And that's what I would do. And okay. I would even go as far as having just get a team together at each church. Maybe, larger churches, there's probably a chance you're going to have a contractor that's a member and all that. Just put a committee together now before you have any problems, and then just have a plan enacted that, hey, we're going to go out, we're going to document the damages, then we're going to call the company and have the adjuster come, and we're going to show him what we see. And let him do his thing.
That sounds like a good, even though churches are still recovering after this hurricane season, but I guess we call it under blue sky days. Once we're hitting into early 2021, maybe new committees are getting together to say, hey, let's go ahead and think about how do we want to act during hurricane season. Right. So there's not the emotional charge of the moment. Let's make sure we do this if an adjuster comes. We hope it doesn't happen, but let's be prepared in case they do. Let me ask you this. Let's just say the adjuster comes through, does his thing. At what point does a church say, we need to go with a public adjuster? How would you wrestle through that, Terry? Any counsel there? Mike, how would you do that through your company specific as well as the public adjuster?
I'll give a tidbit and then I'll let Mike take it from there.
Okay.
My experience, when you go into, when you hire a public adjuster as your agent, it puts it more into the courts, it puts it more into the legal side. And from that point on, my carriers tell me you're to step away, you're not to have any more communication with your client about this claim, because now it's more on the legal side.
Okay.
So in my experience, which I have not had many go to the public adjusting side, but it's kind of like my first thing is always let things take their course, let go the normal route, because carriers see, in my experience, and Mike is going to have more experience at this than I am, but going a public adjusting route is like lawyering up. Well, then of course that changes the ball game, and for everybody. And so I always recommend, let's let things go the normal way. If you don't like the outcome, we will work with the adjuster, we'll work with the carrier to find a resolution. And then if we don't, or if we can't get to a good resolution, then you have all rights, absolutely, and I would support you going the public adjuster way.
Okay, thanks. Mike, what you think?
I look at it this way. If you have a covered claim, the insurance company is going to pay you money. If you hire a public adjuster from day one, you're going to give away probably 10% of what you're going to get as proceeds to this adjuster to handle your
For their fee. Okay.
Yeah, I would, and I tell people, I mean, it's your choice. I mean, that's your right to have one, but I would go through the motions with the insurance adjuster and your company and see what's going to be offered. See if there's a problem to start with. More times than not, there's not a problem. So, you know, at the end, that the public adjuster's got to justify his 10% fee. And in doing so, they're usually going to jack up their estimates, you know, substantially to make it look like, you know, it's a win-win for everybody. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
We're charging you a percentage, we're making money doing it, but we got you more money. Well, what did you net? Did you net more money, or did you just net more aggravation?
Gotcha.
When you get a larger church, you're not going to have a first or second year adjuster handling your claims. It's going to be somebody that's experienced. And contrary to what a lot of people think, the insurance companies, most of them, want to pay what they owe. They're not out trying to play, you know, cloak and dagger and stab people in the back. You know, let's pay it. And I've worked with public adjusters quite a bit. I do a lot of commercial things in Florida, and it seems like when you get these commercial buildings, every other one's got a public adjuster. And I can't honestly say that we've paid any more money on any claim that a public adjuster is involved in.
Let me ask this: is, let's say whether it's the carriers or a public adjuster goes through and they got their report, and somehow, some way, new damage is almost discovered that nobody had seen it for whatever reason. Can the church call back to their agent, and I don't know if the words appeal or do an add to that? So, hey, can you come look at that again? Is it sealed and done, or can it need added to if warranted? New damage discovered.
It can be added to, we call it a supplement. And
Okay.
I like to joke and say we call them estimates, we don't call them actuals. So we're estimating what we see. And yeah, when you tear a wall out, there might be something inside the wall that you can't see. I mean, it's just like taking your car to a body shop and you have to do additional damage, because when they start repairing it, they find additional things. And so to answer your question, unless you sign a policyholder's release, which companies don't do, you don't release yourself from your claim. I mean, it's if you accept a check from the insurance company, that's undisputed. This is what we know at this point. Now, if it's related to the claim and it's found 3 months later or 6 months later, it's still part of the claim. So it would just be a supplement, and that happens all the time.
A couple other questions here is, have y'all found it better, and I don't know if this is the adjusting side or the insurance policy development side. I have churches that say we've chosen to go the full umbrella policy. We have multiple buildings, and so we got the full umbrella policy of everything. Other churches have said we have every building has a unique policy, so there's their own deductibles. is there sway in y'all's opinion one way or the other as of whole campus policy versus individual building? Does it sway one way or another from y'all's perspective? Anything preferred?
Yeah, Terry, I'll let you answer that.
All right. First of all, I want to get straight on some terms.
Sure.
When you use the word umbrella in insurance, that is strictly an umbrella policy is a liability policy. It sits on top of your general liability policy and has nothing to do with the buildings, the property, and this kind of thing. Now, but what I think you might be talking about is what's called a blanket limit. And that is where they write everything under one full limit. That used to be common. It is getting less common now. Or if you do have, there are some small advantages to having a blanket limit. The biggest advantage is if you have 10 buildings and they're all on a blanket limit for, let's say, $10 million. That's your blanket limit. Each building has a limit of $1 million. Well, at the time of loss, the adjuster comes out and says, oh, this isn't $1 million building. It's a 1.5 replacement cost value to build that building back. Without a blanket limit, you could be underinsured, but because you got a blanket limit, they're saying, we're insuring $10 million. Yes, you should have had 1.5 on that. You've only got 1, but we're not going to penalize you for being underinsured. So there are some advantages on a blanket limit. However, I think with Hurricane Sally, we're primarily talking wind damages, not fire and this kind of thing. And the reason there's a huge difference is because Mike mentioned wind deductibles. A fire deductible is probably going to be $5,000, $10,000, something like that. And that's going to be, you know, per occurrence for the fire, whether it damages 1 building or 2 buildings or 3 buildings. With a wind deductible, you always want that to be per building, because if you lump all that 10 million, let's say you have a 2 or 3 or 5% wind deductible, if you were to lump all those buildings together, 10 million, then your deductible is going to be the 2% on the 10 million, not 2% on the $1 million building. So you always want to keep that separate, and that most of the time is done. You know, had one in Sally that the policy said that it was, I believe it was a 3% deductible per location. Well, the church was located at one location, and all the buildings were at that one location. And so that gave the appearance that it had 1% deductible based off of all of their buildings. Well, we were like, that cannot be correct. That is, there's no way, because we, you know, examine these with a magnifying glass before we ever write them. And what you went to, you read further in that deductible, and it said per location as documented on the schedule. You go to the schedule and they listed every building as a separate location. So therefore it got it back to the deductible was based on that building, not all of the buildings combined. So you always want that separated out, because you may have damage to all of your buildings, but you might have a $100,000 deductible and you've got 10,000 damage at this building and $200,000 you lost a roof on this one, which could be, you know, so you can pick and choose. You can say, I want to file a claim on building 1, 4, and 7. Yes, they all sustain damage, but this isn't enough to meet the deductible. And so we're going to pay that out of pocket to have those few shingles or the gutter put back or something like that.
Okay. The whole process, as y'all work tirelessly for it to be as smooth as possible, what can happen, let's just say, for y'all to make it as stressless as possible? Is there any things that a church could do to make the process smooth, for them not to make poor decisions? We've heard a committee, go ahead and form that committee, give them guidance. Any other guidance that you would give from your seat to say, church, be thinking and do this, and it'll make the whole process easy?
Pre-planning. The committee is an excellent idea. It would be just like your safety team committee that meets on a regular basis and they think through possible scenarios. Well, this could be a claims committee or a storm committee or whatever you want to call it. And they meet on a regular basis and review their policy and procedures of what they're going to do and what steps are we going to take. I would also recommend that even having different levels. A level 1, it's not going to be that bad of a storm, but what are we going to do in a level 1? Not a category 1. I'm just talking
Sure.
a level. We're going to do these steps, and here's our checklist, and we're going to check on, this part of the building, these people, and this kind of thing. And then a level 2 is, more severe, and of course, a level 3. People are evacuating because it's another Hurricane Ivan, a category 4. And so what's those procedures? But that pre-planning is essential. After the storm, Mike is right. I set up our office. All we do is churches, and I set up our office to be virtual 10 years ago, almost 11 now, for this very reason. I send staff out of town. They take computers, they take phones, they don't miss a beat. I stay here and I drive around to all the ones that need us so I can guide them and I can talk to them and we can look at things. And it goes back to, should I file a claim or not? And I can walk them through that process that says, yes, you should, because we don't know what's behind that wall that looks okay but kind of questionable or whatever. So let's file a claim, and we can always, and no harm if you don't meet the deductible and this kind of thing. And that's the other reason Mike mentioned the frequency. That's why, we use common sense on all losses. We don't just pick up the phone and, call for the least little thing that we need to pay for anyway, a $100 broken window.
Sure. Well, let me ask you this, is wrapping up here. It's not if, it's when some other type of disaster is going to come. We realize that. What steps do you think a church could take besides, let's say, is there a committee and that planning? Is it good to have good pictures, videoing all the rooms? What other type of blue sky activities would y'all say from your operating post to say, hey, you know what, as we're coming out of the season, let's use these next 6 months, new year, maybe a new committee coming together. What would you encourage for them to do for this Blue Skies Day, reevaluating policies, things of that nature?
I would just general maintenance of the buildings. If you have shingles that look worn in some area, go ahead and replace them. I would probably advise churches also to develop a relationship with a mitigation company, with a construction company prior to, hurricane season or fire season, wherever you live. That way it's not, you're not calling someone out of the blue saying, hey, the roof of the steeple's missing on our church. Can you help us? Have them out, most contractors will be more than happy probably on these larger churches to come out and develop a relationship with you. Then you know that, I'm going to call Bob when my steeple's not there. And we're not having to, look through the yellow pages. And, just have a plan and action, because what you said is true. I mean, we're going to have another storm. There's going to be damage. You live in most of your churches are 20 miles or less to the ocean. You're going to have more claims. There's going to be other storms. So just be prepared for them on every aspect. Have your committee to assess the damage after, have your relationship with contractors, the mitigation companies and all that. And then, I mean, it will make the process a whole lot easier when it happens.
Terry, any final words?
Many contractors like that, such as a building contractor, when you establish that ahead of time, they'll come in and even get blueprints, and they will be ready to go. One final thought on that post-claim is, and it relates to not having those relationships. We have out-of-town contractors, mitigation contractors, roofing contractors, you name it, that will absolutely flood the area. And I hope and pray that you have some of those relationships with contractors established. Best particular example I can give you is we had a claim. It was a water mitigation claim that within the first hours, it was assumed it was going to be about $1 million claim. We had multiple contractors pulling up in the parking lot from out of state going, yep, we can do it. And it's going to be right at $1 million. The contractor that we had a good relationship with spent a couple hours, sharpened his pencil. Thankfully, he is a strong Christian. He got his quote down to the 600 mark. But he said, I'm not taking God's money. I'm going to do it right, and we're going to do it for as little as we can. And the final invoice was closer to the $300,000 mark, as opposed to that original $1 million from an out-of-state contractor. That there's some good ones, and we have to have them because we can't handle the volume. But there is a wise way that we can do this, and that kind of thing. So very important.
Good word. Good word. Hey, well, Mike, Terry, thank you so much for the time. It'll be a blessing to me, helps me to be able to come alongside churches and be able to come alongside all of us as we prepare to kind of guide churches after these tough days. So appreciate your wisdom and your time and your counsel. God bless.